something about what inspires me about what you're doing is because I was in the shower about a year ago, and I was like, our heat had blown, and we had no heat in the house, and I had just been, I had been really working to like expose myself because I realized a while back that I wasn't, paying attention to, I really wasn't being mindful about people I was hanging out with, things that I was doing, and I wanted to be more mindful about it. And so I started to expose myself to more media about stories about indigenous businesses, Black people businesses, people of color, Pakistanis, like people like myself who just like are, but people who did not have access, right? Because I have a lot of privilege, so I have a lot of this access, but they don't. And I was thinking, man, I'm so lucky that I can just turn my heat back on. And I thought to myself, who are the people? I was like, God, there's people in this world who can't just turn their heat back on. They just can't fix it. And I was like, and it's cold out. And I was like, how do I go find people? And then I just read an article saying that Black single mothers struggle the most in that space. And so I was like, I wish there was a way for me to just support Black single mothers. Like, how could I do that? Like, I wish there was literally, I kid you not, Toy Smith, a month later, releases her Loving Black Singles Mothers campaign. And I'm like, oh my God. Same thing occurs when I'm thinking to myself about businesses like who took advantage of the PPP loans, which are amazing and everybody should get them. But the people who needed them the most, Black business owners, chronically ill business owners, mentally ill business owners, like people who traditionally are not like, the white man business owners, how do they get funding? Right. And I thought to myself, God, if only there was a way to support businesses where people were not getting, and then I kid you not, within a few months, this thing comes up and I'm like, oh my God, Sharifah, where the hell have you been all my life? So I am looking for people in my audience who are having those same thoughts in their shower, but don't know how to, because like, I don't like to give to things like big institutions, because I don't know how much of that money is going into the CEO's pocket, So my question for you, actually, I'm really curious to know, as you set this up, like, was part of your structure to make sure that the money is going into the places? Like, how did you, as you were trying to set this up, what were some of the things that were important to you to make sure that got done as part of this initiative?
To make sure that the majority of the money went directly to the business owner.
Nice. And how do you pick your business owner? Like, how do people apply? Like, tell me a little bit about how, like, somebody who is a Black business owner and who is looking for this kind of support, how do they join the Support My Black Business?
Well, on the website, there's a little icon that says start campaign or start here. And so they can, any Black business can create their own campaign. And then I review them and vet them and do a little bit of research to see if who's the owner, if they're a Black business, before adding it to all of it, basically before making it live.
Love that. Love that. And so for someone like me, and I'm like, man, I wish I could support a Black business. What, like, I would just go to the page and then what are my next steps? Like, can I search and pick, like, how does that work?
Yes. So if you go to the website at supportmyblackbusiness.org and you click on all campaigns, you can see the businesses that are seeking assistance and what they're seeking assistance for.
When I did my search, there was one, actually, I wrote her name down because I wanted to reference her again later. Michelle Burgess, who is doing the the bookstore. She sells books for related to African culture, which I think is brilliant. I was like, all right, that's my next month's campaign. So this month I did Jermaine Leroux for her medical wigs. That was
medical wigs.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, what a gift. And then of course to your campaign, which is awesome.
Yes.
So I wanted to interview you because you inspired me in a way that I don't know if I've told you this. I may have. I gushed you often about how awesome you are, but this one in particular. So you told me you used to start the conversations that you would have with your entrepreneurs. You would start by talking about how you ran for the Southern California City Council candidate and that you didn't win, but you had something to say. And so you were like, I'm going to start my own talk show. And I thought that was the most badass thing I had literally ever heard. When people are like, yeah, I don't know. And you're like, yeah, well, no, fuck off. Yes. Right. Can you tell me? Because like a lot of my listeners struggle with hearing no, and often will just kind of be like, no, okay. And we'll just turn around and go, okay, I'm going to go back to my corner here. But you didn't do that. You were just like, yeah, no, I'm going to do my own. Can you tell me a little bit about how that happened?
Well, yes, because I ran for city council and I love the idea of having more than one person making a decision and having a conversation. And for years, I had done one-on-one interviews, and that was since 2009. And so from 2009 to 2020, I was just doing one-on-one and I kind of got bored and I was like, I got to do something interesting, different, fun. And so with city council, I was like, well, they won't give me city council. So I took the round table, but I was going to have a platform where I could have a conversation with multiple people. And it became interesting because, people didn't always agree and they had different opinions and you can actually have a conversation. I found when it was one-on-one, I did more of like, oh yes, yes, that's wonderful, that's nice. And I was like, no, everything
I feel called out, Sharifah.
is sweet. No, but that's
No, I love
how
it. It's
that's
true.
how
It's
I
true
felt.
though. Like, I get it.
Yeah, because you don't want to be like rude. You get a guest on your show and you're like, no, I don't like that, So
That's fair. That's fair. It is like, yeah.
yeah, nobody ever come back. So when I have multiple guests, it just made it easier to have a conversation.
Absolutely. And they were I really, honestly, that was one of the most fun. I think I signed up for literally everyone, one a week or one every
Yes,
other week. I became like,
yes,
I'm going to be here all the time.
yes. No, I love that. And I appreciated that.
It was ridiculously fun. So speaking of you running for city council, I noticed that you are on the primary ballot for the California State Senate District 33.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because, like, when we talked last, which was about probably several months ago, you were working on getting the Support My Black Business off the ground. You had just closed the roundtables and were moving into your reality show. I had no idea you were still going into politics. Tell me a little bit about this, what you're running for.
So that would be Senate, California Senate for 2024, District 33. And that was after I was like, I have to go back into politics. I love politics. It's something that I didn't really know that I was going to enjoy as much, but I truly loved it because one of the things that I learned was that when you're campaigning, whether a person or organization or the news media agrees with you or likes you, they have to hear you. And once I really made that realization, it was like, oh, okay, I can say what I want to say. And they have to, they can't just be like, oh, I want to talk to these two candidates, but I don't like her. No, all the candidates have a platform. And so I just used my platform to say whatever it is that I'm passionate about. And I'm really passionate about eradicating homelessness and unemployment, being laid off 8 times, being homeless, losing everything that I had. Those are issues that are near and dear to my heart.
I was actually thinking about this the other day about how this is when you're just running for something gives you such a great opportunity to have to have a platform and talk about these things. And so you mentioned that homelessness, unemployment, those are really, really critical and so important to be talking about. Would you like to share? I'd love to actually, because I'm reading this book called Laziness Does Not Exist. And in it talks about the societal stigma that surrounds homelessness. And it's awful and it's unfair because society tends to be very judgy and make a lot of untrue and blanket assessments about people who are homeless or unemployed. They're lazy, they don't know what they're doing, that kind of thing. But really, there are some systemic issues that are causing these problems. I would love to hear a little bit more about, like, just in terms of when you're on your campaign trail and talking about it, can you share a little bit about, like, why it is so important for us to really address this issue head on?
Well, in my opinion, the reason I feel it's important to address this issue head on is because we tend to live with this idea that we are all different, we're all separate. And in truth, we're all one, we're all connected. I look at certain things and people and I literally go, there for the grace of God go I. I've never slept on the street. I've never been dirty. I've never, dealt with drug dependency or any of these issues to be on the street. But everyone, just about every American right now is one paycheck, one accident, one emergency away from losing just about everything that they have. And so often when we look at that individual, we go, ooh, they're homeless. That's a reflection of us. That's a fear in us to say, okay, well, what if I wound up in that situation? Because you never know what situations you can wind up in. Some of the situations I've been in, I would have never imagined or dreamed that I would wind up in those situations, and yet I have.
It is such an important point to note that most of America is just one, like, yeah, that's such an important statistic that we're one paycheck away from being homeless. Because we think, like you said, homeless people are there, that's them. That's not
Mhm.
going to happen to me. And the truth is it could happen to any of us at any point in time. I too am very lucky to not have ever had the issue of living on the streets, but I've gotten close enough to the point where, I'm literally counting pennies and not able to, I'm eating a rotten tomato because that's really all that I can afford at that moment. And those are the moments where you realize that we're not all that different and we are creating those connections. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to talk about that today because, we really do need to eradicate that, sort of us and them sort of thing in there. Now, I want to hear a little bit more about unemployment because that's actually something that's near and dear to my heart is the way that our entire employment structure in general kind of like it is set up to reward behaviors that don't actually create productivity, they don't create income, they don't create life happiness. Like we have a lot of structures that are in place that make it really hard for your average everyday worker to feel like they're getting ahead or that they can get ahead. Can you tell me a little bit about what part of that you're so passionate about and what draws you to that?
As far as unemployment?
As far as, unemployment. So like when somebody is working at like a, anywhere where they're working, right? And they feel like I've got this job, but they could lose that job so easily. Like it can happen so quickly. Like before we even get to the homelessness part, when we're at this full employment, like what are some of the things that are challenges, like that are the things keeping them like on that precipice, of almost being unemployment? And what are some of, as part of your campaign, like what are some of the things that you feel that you'd like to see changed to make it so that it's not there are not so many people almost teetering on the edge?
Right. So that's like 18 different questions in one. I
I'm
love
really
it.
good at that. Pick the one you want to answer and answer that one. Whichever one you're like, I want to answer that one, Vanessa.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make my own question, right? I'm just gonna answer what I want to
answer
answer.
the question you wish I had asked.
Right. That's what we're gonna do. With unemployment, I think one of the things that I realized more than anything else is that being laid off has its own mental health issues, right? Because I was laid off 8 times. And so often when you leave a job, especially, because this started around 2001, right after 911, and, America fell apart. It just one layoff after another, after another. And usually when you leave a job, you leave for something else. If you're resigning because you got that other job. You're resigning because you're going back to school. You're resigning because you're going to be a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home parent. And it's your choice. And you've made some type of provisions to make sure that you survive, or if you get fired from a job, whether you admit it to nobody else in the world but yourself, there was something that you did wrong. There was something that was your fault. But when you're laid off, especially repeatedly, you're just trying to scramble to keep your world from falling apart. You may have a $50,000 a year job, get laid off from that job, and then you're like, you know what, I still got to eat, I still got to feed the family, and so you just take anything, and so you go from 50,000 to 29,000 to 40,000 to 32,000, and your income and your life and everything is just all over the place, and it really takes a toll on you because you can't stop. One of the other issues along with unemployment and going back to the mental health issue is PTSD. And so often, we just say, okay, well, it's the vets that suffer from PTSD, but every American, especially after a global pandemic, is suffering from some form of PTSD, some type of trauma that has affected them. And the way we are as Americans is we don't allow people time to grieve the life that we once had, to grieve the job that we once had, to grieve the people that we once had. Even most jobs, even when you lose a spouse or a parent, they're like, you got 3 days, grieve and get back to work. And so there's a lot of emotions and anxiety and stress and trauma that are built up in individuals. So what I would like to do is to be able to help people to recognize the trauma that people are experiencing with unemployment and find other ways to get those people back into the workforce. Because whether they were laid off, fired, quit, however they became unemployed, I think the key that we have to understand is that we have to be of service to those people. We can't just say, okay, well, they'll figure it out. And I think in the past, that's really what we've done as a people, is said they will figure it out.
The message that I'm hearing from you is about community and about like support, because I feel like, and I just had COVID for 17 days and it was like the worst experience of my whole life. But one of the things that I have to say that honestly, it was a gift. It was a blessing. Like, it was really traumatic while I was going through it, but I feel so blessed to have gone through that experience, because while I was in the throes of COVID, I felt to myself, your community is the most important thing. And I thought to myself, it's because I have the friends that I do who support me. It's because I have the people that I know will be there, like my clients and whatnot. They're going to be there afterwards, right? They're, even though I'm sick now and I have to cancel all these things, they'll still be there. And there's such comfort in that. But if you are traumatized, like you mentioned, you're going from, pace, like you were making 50,000, then you're making 29,000. That takes such a toll on your confidence and like the way that you feel. Even though you are as badass as you were before, it doesn't matter. You still feel like you're a failure, like, because that's what society's messages are so poor. And when we are in those spaces, it is the compassion and the support of our community that will help us get back on track, that then is better for everyone in the long run, right? So like, do you feel like the current status is really like short-sighted, that it's not really thinking about like the long-term investment, like the short-term investment in this person, helping them get back up on their feet is going to be a long-term return? Do you feel like the current system is really short-sighted?
I wouldn't say it's short-sighted, because I think the current system that we have was created to do, and it has done what it was created to do. I think what happened, especially during a global pandemic, is you had people who made a conscious decision as a society. So they did it individually, but their individual decisions affected the collective, meaning that you have more creatives, more entrepreneurs who decided over this global pandemic that they didn't want to go back to work, that they didn't want to go back to this job, that they wanted to do something that really they were passionate about, something that made their heart sing. So a lot of people, retired, a lot of people quit their day jobs, but there was a time where more people were searching for the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? I've had the money in the bank account. I have the money that job gives me, but where's the freedom? Where's the creative license? Where's the art in my life? Where's something that makes my heart sing? So at any time or any society, what happens is people do things a certain way until they outgrow that way of doing things. And then all of a sudden, people adjust, society adjusts. And so instead of saying, okay, let me help these people and let me give these people a hand out, then you have more people who said, you know what, I have the ability to help myself. I believe that we are living in one of the most beautiful times to be alive. We're living in the age of information, a technology age, where it used to be where, even scripture says my people suffer from lack of knowledge. But in 2022, their knowledge is the one thing and information is the one thing that we have. You can go on the internet and go on YouTube and watch a video to teach you how to do anything under the sun that you want to do. So now that information is available, there isn't anyone who, if they make a conscious decision and a conscious choice to change their life, that doesn't have that ability.
And that's the pandemic did allow for that so much. And actually, that actually dovetails nicely into like you being like a resource for entrepreneurs. So you've been in business for years and years and years. Since I think you and I built our first website around the same year. 1994 was yours, mine was 1995. So we were pretty close in terms of those GeoCities websites that we were creating back in the day.
Yes.
But you've spent a lifetime developing your brand and your position as a resource for entrepreneurs. And you were just talking about how everybody is now feeling like I can branch out on my own. I can do this. Clearly you have a passion for people's creativity and like helping them to achieve whatever goals it is that they want to achieve, whether it's in creativity or employment. So I'm curious to know, what was it that made you want to be the resource for entrepreneurs? Like, what is it about entrepreneurship that excites you for other people?
I think it's one of the things that I found as an entrepreneur is that every entrepreneur that I've spoken with, 100% across the board, it is more of a calling than anything else. A calling being something that they have to do, something that they must do, something that they've tried and stopped and tried and stopped. And all of a sudden they're like, you know what, wait a minute, this is what I am meant to do. So for me, it wasn't even something that I made a conscious choice to do initially. When I built my first website in 1994, people were like, hey, that's cool. I want a website. So I started building websites for other people. And then I started marketing my website, and people were like, hey, that's cool. I want you to market my website. And so I started marketing websites. And over time, because I was one of the first people, at least that, in my circle that had a website, people were like, okay, let me ask Sharifah. And that's where the Ask Sharifah brand and AskSharifah.com developed. Because there were questions, because this is all new to them. And it's still amazing to me in 2022, how many people this is all still new to them. So what I do as far as being a resource is just being available to answer some of the questions. And sometimes, I'll find different people who I work with them. They're like, I did this. And I'm like, why did you do that? And they're like, well, I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, that's why you're supposed to ask Sharifah. It's not just about helping people make money. I can help people save money because I've been watching this for literally, almost 30 years. People don't know what a website costs. People don't know what, people tell them, oh, well, you have to have SEO and that requires, $50,000. People don't know. So I just became a resource because people would just ask me questions. And if I didn't know, then I knew someone who had the answer. And I just became a connector and a referral point, because I would always like, oh, you got to meet this person. You got to meet this person. You have to know this person. And just started connecting people through not only my shows, but just through networking.
And that's how you inspired me the second way, is watching the way you ran your show and the way you supported people. I realized, in talking with you, I realized I wanted to do things very, very differently. And so that's actually why I made a lot of big changes. So thank you very much for that education that I don't know you knew you were giving me at the time, but passively I got it, and actively. Okay, so now based off of that, I want to ask you something. You have gone through, we've talked about so many things that you've experienced over the last 30 years building a business. You were talking about how when someone starts a business, it's a calling, right? I'm curious, if I was to say, what is Sharifah Hardie's calling? What is your calling?
My calling is to help people. And I say that all the time. And it's the most simplistic idea, but I'm simply here to serve people, to help people. Often when people are starting out in business, they don't know who to ask, or, they can Google and find an accountant, or they can Google and find their legal team, but there isn't a consultant that they have on board to assist them with every aspect. Being an entrepreneur, being a business owner can be one of the loneliest, industries, companies, occupations there is, because every hat there is, you wear. So there isn't that other person that you can contact to say, well, what should we do with the company? How should we move forward? Should we do this? Should we do that? What are your ideas? What are your suggestions? And so often, especially with an entrepreneur within their family, they may be the only person that has that business acumen. So they can't go to their spouse and go, oh, well, what do we do about, the market demand? Because their spouse is like, I'm just trying to figure out what we're having for dinner. So there isn't that team, that coworker, that support that you have within an actual company. So what I do is just try to be that resource for people. And it was something that I always talk about. I fought for a long time because, even when I talk about my book, one of my first books, and Here's Your Box, From Laid Off to Love and Life, a part of that was God kept closing the door, because I was supposed to help people, but that's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to help Sharifah. I wanted to go get that job. I always tell people, nothing says I love you like direct deposit. Knowing that, no, that's my stuff right there. Direct deposit. I love that. That is so awesome. But you can count on it. You can schedule bills based on, I'm going to have this deposit on Friday morning at midnight. I can schedule that for Friday, it'll, but when you're an entrepreneur and you basically eat what you catch, it's a very different mindset. So you need that type of guidance and that type of assistance to go to someone else and say, okay, well, and especially small business owners, they don't have that war chest that's sitting there for all their marketing ideas. Most business owners, entrepreneurs, are basically doing what I consider Hail Mary moves. And, they just need a Hail Mary pass to win, which means that they usually only have enough money in the bank for like that month, not this year or not, next 5 years, which is recommended, but just basically this has to work. And so when you're going at it with that type of energy, your energy can go to a desperation mode. So I just try to help people breathe, relax. What is your next step? And so what I found with entrepreneurs is and back to your original question about it being a calling, is that there's something in them that says, I have to do this. I have to do this. But there's also something that may be in them and say, but I don't know how to do this, or I can never be successful. And the first thing that I have to do is remove that blockage, because I always say 100% across the board that if you are not doing what you were meant to do, then there's a blockage. There's something there, and it could be a mental blockage, a physical blockage, a financial blockage, but there's something there blocking you from doing what you're meant to do. And that's usually a thought process, how you're thinking. I'll give you a prime example. I was speaking at an engagement last month, and I was supposed to just be speaking, but it turned into a Q&A, which it tends to happen when I'm around, because people just start asking questions. And the lady asked a question and we talked about that. And so then she says, well, I have a nonprofit and I need to ask, how do I make money for the nonprofit? And she was like, well, I asked too many questions. I'll ask that question another time. And so I just said, no, because the answer is, if you're a nonprofit and you don't have any money, it's because you haven't asked. You have not because you asked. And that's what nonprofits are created for, is to go out and ask for money so that they can help people and that they can service people. So if you don't have any money, then there's a blockage, and that blockage is you going out and asking for it. And so the reason you feel that you may not have the ability to ask for it has some type of limiting belief. There's some belief where you feel like they won't give it to me, or there's not enough money. And those are the things that block business owners. If you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner and you buy into the media, and I know a lot of people, that's a phrase that people say, don't buy into the media, don't buy into the media, but it's a little bit more difficult to live that idea. But what that means to me is that when you hear those, oh, well, it's inflation and everybody's going out of business. And if you believe that, then you get a scarcity mentality and you believe, oh, well, there's not enough money or things are scarce. But there's always more than enough. God has always provided from the beginning of time. One of my father's favorite expressions, he would always say, is God provides for the birds and the bees. Why would he not provide for the son of man? So we get everything we need, not always everything that we want. And so those are the things that I want to help people understand and realize.
That is so powerful. We get everything we need, maybe not necessarily everything we want. Because sometimes we want things, and like what you want, like, have you ever wanted something and then you get it and you're like, shit, I didn't want this.
Yes. And that's usually when I paid for it. You know what I mean? It's funny. I just dropped all this money, and then I'm like, you know what? I could have done something else with this money. I could have, you know what I mean? It's not exactly what I wanted.
Absolutely. And sometimes I don't get what I want. I'm really pissed, but then like a little bit later, I'll get what I need, and I will realize, I'll see the connections, that I'll be like, oh, I understand now. One of my favorite sayings is, everything happens for a reason, but you're not necessarily going to know the reason right now. And it's up to you to figure out what that reason is. It's not just going to come into your life, be like, this is why it happened this way. It's like, no, right. you gotta do that legwork on your own.
Yes. No, one of my favorites is the one that kind of changed my life, and it's still changing my life. And I love simple expressions, but everything works itself out in the end. If it hasn't worked itself out, it's not the end, And so I'm like, because I go through situations. I'm like, oh my God, like this is not, I'm like, okay, well, you know what I mean? This obviously is not the end. There's more to come, because this situation hasn't worked itself out as of yet.
That's what I tell myself the same thing when I'm like right in the middle. When you're in the middle and you're in that fetal position on the floor and you're like, oh God, this sucks. You're like, you know what?
Right.
It's just, I'm right in the middle of it now. Just keep going, which means, when you're in that moment, that like you're already through it at this, but you're already going through it at this point. So like you've already made a lot of progress, like a
Right.
lot. When you're in those moments, you and I are both very spiritual people, and I know that you have some really great practices to keep yourself grounded. So, and I love to share that with my audience because not everybody has those practices and everyone's always looking for ideas to help them. So when you are in those spaces of maybe of doubt or of like in where it's not the end yet, where do you go in terms of practices, habits, whatever? What is your way to like help ground yourself, bring yourself happiness, kind of bring yourself back to where it is like that you're like, I'm in a shitty place now, but I know how to get back there. What's your go-to?
My go-to is gratitude. I don't think that there's anything better in the world than gratitude. I mean, you can do different techniques, meditation, there are a million different meditation techniques, but I think the root of everything is just simple gratitude. Again, therefore the grace of God go I. It's God's grace that has allowed me to have this life and didn't allow someone else to have that life. It's just simple grace. So I just try very hard. My friends know, like, I'm a stickler for gratitude, and I take that in everything that I do. Like even my car, people get in my car all the time and they're like, your car is immaculate. Like you just drove it off the lot, because I don't allow my car to get dirty. To me, because I'm so excited to get this car and this God has blessed me with this. So to me, it's ungrateful to just let it get dirty and trashy and there's food and there, like that's to me a sign of being ungrateful. And I would never want to be ungrateful. So when I have any situation that I am going through personally, I pray and I let it go. And I always say, when God is working on whatever it is that I have asked for or prayed for, that I go and help somebody else. And I do that literally. Like I'll find somebody to be of service to, somebody to focus my attention on their problem, on their issue, instead of sitting there feeling sorry for myself, and when you ask for something, you ask God for something, then you have to be able to just release it and let it go. So often what happens is we won't let go of the wheel. That's an expression I heard years ago that stuck with me, is that, God can't drive if you won't let go of the wheel. And so I've learned to just let go of whatever the situation is. Again, letting it work itself out, because it will work itself out in the end. But so often when I sit and I worry and I stress and I'm like, oh my God, how's this going to work? And I put my Sharifah ideas on it, it usually comes out much worse than if I would just let it go and allow it to just be. And I think that's the most difficult thing that people, have to do. There's an expression that I heard that Oprah said, and she said, most people, when they don't know what to do, they have to do something. She said, but when I don't know what to do, I don't do anything until I know what to do. And I got that. And I've used that in so many more instances. And what it basically means is that we don't waste the time and the energy and the resources just running around because we don't know what to do. Sometimes if you just sit in quiet and stillness and you just wait, all of a sudden you'll just know what to do. And then I get up and I start going in a direction, and that's absolutely the right path for me. So that's what works for me.
That is the most brilliant. Honestly, I got to tell you, this one you've added to you always add to, but this one, I'm going to take that quote and run with it, because there's something just the other day, as you were describing this, I felt called out because there was a thing, I can't even remember exactly what it is now, but I remember talking to my wife and a few other people about, should I do this? And I wanted to continue to take action. And my therapist said, sometimes you have to just sit and wait. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I had to have a lot of people reminding me of that. But this Oprah's quote really, like you said, you like simple quotes. Now I can run with that. I have a simple quote in my head to say to myself whenever I feel, because whenever I feel like I don't know what to do, I do that. I feel like it doesn't matter what action I take. I just have to take some action. But the second you started to say that, I was like, wait a minute, why do I feel that way? Because like, I know that's so good. Thank you so much on that one. Okay. So as we wrap up, we're going to loop back around to the beginning. As we wrap up, I wanted to talk about your current initiative, which is like so exciting to me, which is support my Black business. And the thing that we didn't get at the very beginning because I didn't record it is what it is, where it came from. So we'll just re-loop that one back in. And I'd love to, this is such a brilliant initiative for people who want to support Black businesses and support my Black business. I would love to learn a little bit about where did this idea come from? It's such a great idea. Tell us about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that you love it, that you appreciate it. It's what I'm passionate about. One of the things that I saw during the global pandemic is that many of the government funding did not go out to minority businesses or Black-owned businesses. So as a result, about 441,000 Black businesses closed across the country. So that's 500,000 businesses that closed. And so I was reading a story about these three sisters who had an ice cream shop, and they were struggling and they were getting ready to go out of business. So they go to their dad and they're like, Dad, we don't know what to do. And their dad told them to create a GoFundMe. And they said, we don't want to create a GoFundMe. That's embarrassing. People would think that, we're begging. And especially in the Black community, we have this thing that we have a lot of pride and we don't want to ask for help. And so their dad's just like, look, either you create a GoFundMe or you go out of business, so those were their choices and those were their options. And these three sisters created this GoFundMe and they raised $30,000 for their business and they're still in business today. And so I said, well, what if we could do the same thing for brothers and sisters across the country? And we can allow people specifically to support their Black businesses. So I created the business and it's at supportmyblackbusiness.org. And it allows Black business owners to create crowdfunding campaigns. And it allows other people to make donations and contributions to their crowdfunding campaign. And so whatever their idea is, whatever their dream is, other people can support it. So my goal is to raise $1.5 billion across the entire platform. So there is a campaign on there, which is my personal campaign, which I literally say #help a sister out, because that's my focus. And you'll see through Support My Black Business, we have not raised a lot of money. And there's still a sense of pride in that for me, because I still do a lot of marketing. I still do a lot of advertising. I'm on the cover of Total Prestige magazine for the month of November. And I'm so excited about that because it's my first cover. And it's not only a digital magazine, but they print 25,000 copies. And so it's geared towards the rich elite people. But on the cover for November, you see my little Black face, like, help a sister out. Because the whole thing is the marketing and the advertising that I've done literally comes out of my pocket. Everything, all the press, the media, the advertising, the publicists, I pay for, through my companies. And so I want people to help me to help people. So that's my goal in raising the money. And so being able to use the money and being able to use the resources to make more awareness for supportmyblackbusiness.org. So other Black businesses will join and create their campaigns, and we have more ways to be able to support them. So this show, your show, coming out in November. November is going to be a huge push. I'm on Portia Booker's show coming out in November, but it is going to be what I want people to really help me with, and that is supporting these Black businesses.
That is, well, I'm all on board. I'm going to spend November helping to promote this everywhere. I'm going to actually, now that you've told me about the magazine, you're going to have to send me the link, but I'm going to buy the magazine. Can I buy the magazine online? Is that something I can do? Okay, because I want a magazine with your face on it. Like, I want that magazine. Yes. Yes.
They sent me over the cover image, and then they sent me the inside article, and it was just, I had to go in a different direction because everything has been so cool. The people have been so supportive. So I sent out the press release announcing my $1.5 billion raise, and nothing happened that day. And I was like, oh my God, like, it went out and nothing happened. But Thursday, I received a Google alert that Black Enterprise had ran the story that I'm raising $1.5 billion. And that was huge because as a little girl, I always dreamed of being on Black Enterprise. And this is the second time this year I've been in Black Enterprise. And this was the first time that Black enterprise actually wrote a story instead of just running the press release. They did their research, wrote a story, and it was the coolest thing. And so that was Thursday. And so Friday, I'm on Facebook News, just minding my own business because I love to read the news and see what's going on in the world. And I see me. And I was like, oh my God,
That's amazing.
right. And it was like the coolest feeling to just find another article that an outlet had wrote completely, on their own about $1.5 billion, and that I'm the entrepreneur who wants to raise this money. So all of a sudden it's more awareness. I just need more support and more awareness for supportmyblackbusiness.org, because a lot of these Black businesses are really suffering. They need support. Like you said, the lady who does the medical wigs, helping people who have cancer and alopecia, different medical issues like that. Jordan's Rooter of Plumbing, raising money for a new truck for his plumbing company. There's so many different ways that I want people to be able to support the businesses, and I want the businesses to create their campaigns.
Oh my, there's so many things you just said. First, badass. Oh my God, so amazing that you're on the cover of the magazines and that you're getting all of this exposure. I wanted to tell you that I too, when I did a search this morning, it seems like the articles keep coming now. Like 2 days ago, I did a search and there was one article that wasn't there. It's popped up now, and another one that popped up yesterday. So I feel like what you're doing is working. It's just sort of, it's getting its momentum. It's sort of like, and then suddenly once it, starts, it'll be like off to the races. So I love that so much. So for my listeners, if you are like Sharifah just indicated that exposure is really important. So some of my listeners, you are going to want to donate, and I want you to please go and donate as much as you are able. But if you're not, then simply sharing the campaign and sharing your experience listening to this podcast and sharing Sharifah's story is enough to get people to go and learn about Sharifah, learn about what she does, and really buy into her mission. Your sharing of the post and sharing of the podcast in and of itself will help to create traction for this. Sharifah, you are amazing as always. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we sign off, I just want to ask you, is there anything that I didn't ask that you just really want to make sure you get out there into the world that you would you're like, Vanessa, ask me this question? Anything like that?
No, I don't have a question like that. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. It is an honor, and it's 6:00 in California right now when we're making this happen. I got up, you got up. It's like, you know what? We have to do this. So thank you for providing a platform. Thank you for being consistent, and thank you for being consistently you. You always show up as your authentic self. And people have asked, like, what's the trend? What's the buzzword? What's the key? And I'm like, the word that I'm hearing more than anything else is truly authenticity. Just be authentic with who you are. And you do that. You're authentic. And that's why you're one of my favorite people, because I know that you will always tell me your truth. And so I don't want to take that lightly. And I don't want your listeners to take that lightly. I want them to tune in on a regular basis and watch this show, because there's so much information that you're able to provide. And so I just want to really point that out and to thank you for being you.
Thank you so much. I feel, you know what? I feel like the best thing that ever happened to me was when you sent me like that email. And I remember I looked on your page and I was like, I don't know what it is about this person, but I feel connected to her. I have to be on our show immediately. And I am so glad that we did, because you know what it is? You never know why things happen, right? Like that's how we started, but look where we are now, and who knows where we're going to go together.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.